Welcome back to Bruins Diehards, where we do a deep dive into the past, present, and future of your Boston Bruins. Today, we're taking a step back into one of the most painful what-ifs in recent franchise history. What if the Bruins had won the Stanley Cup in 2019? What if Game 7 had gone Boston's way? What if the controversial non-trip call on Noel Acciari in Game 5 had been made? How different might the Bruins roster, culture, and championship window look today? Stick around because this alternative reality might just change the way you look at everything that's happened to the Bees since that fateful June night. So buckle up, Bruins fans. I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. If you've been liking my Bruins content, please leave me a like and subscribe. If you've already done so, thank you, and let's get into it. Imagine, if you will, the Boston Bruins hoisting the Stanley Cup in June 2019 at TD Garden, defeating the St. Louis Blues in Game 7 instead of losing. Heck, I was at Game 5. How different would the trajectories of the players, roster construction, and organizational mindset have been? The ripple effects from a championship, the momentum, the confidence, the retention or departure of key players would have profoundly altered ensuing seasons. Boston would have celebrated its second championship in the Chara Bergeron era, following the 2011 Stanley Cup championship. And the final reward for veteran stalwarts Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and Zdeno Chara, and emerging heroes like Charlie McAvoy, Jake DeBrusk, and Brandon Carlo. A cup likely would have extended the primes of that core, deterred some from departing early in the next cycle, and reinforced the leadership group. The most controversial sequence came in Game 5, where the series tied 2-2 as Boston held hopes for season control at home. In the third period, St. Louis forward Tyler Bozak tripped Bruins winger Noel Acciari, flooring him momentarily in the slot. No penalty was called. The whole arena went absolutely crazy at this point. Acciari lay vulnerable, and moments later, David Perron capitalizes to give the Blues a 2-0 lead, the eventual game winner. That missed call is widely regarded as a major turning point. NHL officiating director Stephen Wolcombe later defended it as a judgment call. Through public outrage was overwhelming. I have never seen an arena, personally myself, that outraged by anything. People were losing their minds. Supposedly also the league later sent an email to the Boston Bruins apologizing for the non-call. But that's it. Just a whoopsie. Bruins coach at the time, Bruce Cassidy, called the league's officiating performance a black eye on the NHL. Fans threw towels and debris onto the ice in anger. While the non-call altered Game 5's momentum, many argue that Boston didn't do enough to win regardless. They went 0-for-3 on the power play, and their top lines continued to struggle 5-on-5. I also think a lot of momentum. This was in the third period when it happened, but there was so much momentum going into the game. It was going back and forth. That was the game where Chara comes back with the broken jaw. There was a lot of emotion in this game. The Bruins get a 5-minute power play on that thing. I still say it, they win the game. But again, Boston's own lapses were just as costly. Other key events that tilted that series. Tuukka Rask had been outstanding through the playoffs. A 2.02 goals against average and a .934 save percentage and over 24 postseason starts. Yet in Game 7, Rask allowed 4 goals on 32 shots and uncharacteristically high and couldn't match Jordan Binnington's stellar outing. Yeah, it was weird. Rask had been lights out the whole playoffs, and then in this one game, he wasn't. Then again, the team in front of him was terrible too. Boston leaned heavily on its top 6 forwards, Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak, DeBrusk, Krejci to produce. Brad Marchand tallied 23 playoff points, 9 goals and 14 assists, but had a costly defensive miscue, including a poorly timed line change that led to a key Ryan O'Reilly goal. The third and fourth lines, vital in earlier rounds, faded in the final. Meanwhile, St. Louis's fourth line provided consistent forecheck, pressure, and secondary scoring, giving them the edge in depth. The Bruins were also riddled in injuries, and a lot of their key players they had nothing left in the tank. Boston's best player in the finals included Patrice Bergeron, who played in elite two-way hockey, Brad Marchand, who led the team in playoff scoring, and David Pastrnak, whose scoring touch was contained late in the series. Charlie McAvoy anchored the blue line with elite minutes, and Brandon Carlo emerged as a shutdown force. Jake DeBrusk scored 5 goals, and in our hypothetical timeline, we're giving Patrice Bergeron the game winner in Game 7. Tuukka Rask, despite his Game 7 setback, had been the team's MVP throughout the playoffs, and many thought he was still going to win the Conn Smythe with whether the Bruins win or lose that game. Had Boston won the Cup in 2019, the ripple effects would have been enormous. Winning likely would have forfeited aging veterans' resolve to press on. Zdeno Chara might have accepted a reduced role instead of retiring later on. Chara leaves the Bruins, but I think if they win in 2019, he doesn't leave. David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron may have deferred retirement. Maybe this one I don't know. Both Krejci and Bergeron, we're finding out, actually retired because their body they have nothing left. Bergeron says he can barely hold a stick, and same with David Krejci right now. The victory would have softened the blow of later playoff disappointments, preserving the core's unity. Trades and departures might have been delayed. A championship likely would have been extended, Brad Marchand and Bergeron's primes, or inspired long-term deals. I truly believe Zdeno Chara would have stayed. The Bruins would have attracted more players to stay. It would have prolonged everything. They could have taken more time off with Bergeron and not pushed him when he gets injured. A lot of times during the years after, especially in 2023, the Bruins played injured. And if they win that second cup, they probably might have been a little bit more reserved and just said, hey, we'll wait for the playoffs type thing. The Bruins may have avoided overhauling the roster, remaining more depth instead of initiating a youth movement. The winning culture would have accelerated the development of young players. Jake DeBrusk, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, Matt Grzelcyk would have gained confidence, potentially stepping into leadership roles sooner. A cup win could have secured Bruce Cassidy's position through at least 2022, avoiding his eventual firing. The front office, excited by success, might have retained coaching and strategic continuity. AKA, Cam wouldn't have had a sucky fit and fired Bruce only to watch him host a cup in Vegas the next year. Look how that worked out for you, Cam. A Boston victory in 2019 also would have impacted asset allocation. Rather than scrambling to fill voids with trades or overpaying free agents, the Bruins could have allocated cap space to secure key contributors and develop their pipeline gradually. Bergeron might have become captain earlier because Chara might have accepted that lesser role, surrounded by a stable veteran core. DeBrusk, embodied by championship confidence, could have become a mainstay top six forward instead of forcing trade out of Boston and complaining about ice time when he was in a top six role all along, playing with Krejci and Bergeron. It was so hard being Jake DeBrusk. From a fan's perspective, the Bruins' identity would have been further cemented as one of the NHL's premier franchises of the 21st century. A second cup in 8 years would have positioned Boston alongside Chicago and Pittsburgh as possible being modern dynasties. I think 3 cups seals it, but much harder to win now in the cap era, so maybe 2? Let me know in the comments what you think the new definition of a dynasty is. The aura of a missed opportunity would have been replaced with fulfillment. Players like Rask, Marchand, and Krejci would have entered a different tier of legacy, validated as champions, not just contenders. Heck, maybe Marchand doesn't even go to Florida. Revisiting the Acciari non-call. Was it the final nail or a symptom of deeper issues? It undeniably altered the flow of Game 5. A penalty and potential power play goal could have swung the series. If Boston had won Game 5 at home, they would have led the series 3-2, putting pressure on St. Louis in Game 6. A win there would have clinched the cup. Even if the series returned for Game 7, momentum and home ice advantage would have favored the Bruins. In that scenario, the Cup parade becomes real. Cassidy stays coach, Chara, Krejci, and Bergeron extend their Bruins tenure, McAvoy ascends to captain, possibly in the future, we don't know. DeBrusk becomes a breakout star. The front office stays stable. The Bruins make deeper playoff runs from 2020 to 2023, perhaps appearing in another final. Instead, the loss triggered a slow unraveling. Chara leaves the Bruins only to retire. Bergeron and Krejci left once they retire. Krejci leaves and comes back. Cassidy was fired. Marchand aged into inconsistency, and then he leaves. The Bruins missed the playoffs by 2025, facing a leadership vacuum. I think a lot of the inconsistencies with Marchand have to do with the team beside him. You just had Marchand and Pastrnak as the only rudders because your defense is just inconsistent. McAvoy's injured. Lindholm has, he's a little streaky, but still good. But it's just, there wasn't enough pieces up in the top 6 to help Marchand and Pastrnak. Perhaps the most consequential ripple is how different 2023 and 24 might have been. The 2023 Bruins, despite a record-setting regular season, crumbled in round 1. But in an alternate universe, one where they already have the cup pedigree, confidence, and continuity from 2019, maybe the collapse never happens. Maybe they play looser, more experienced, with nothing to prove. Maybe the team completes the job and hangs another banner. Bruce Cassidy spoke about that when he went to Vegas the next year. He talked about how he wanted to do things differently from the 2019 playoffs. Be looser. Look what happens. Ultimately, the 2019 Cup final was defined by fine margins. The missed trip call on Acciari mattered. But it was one of many missed opportunities. The Bruins' failure to convert on the power plays, their defensive lapses, and St. Louis's superior depth all contributed. Had they won, the lasting impact on the team identity, player retention, and championship window would have reshaped the Bruins' legacy. In this alternative timeline, the Bruins don't just win a cup, they preserve an era. So much of what defines a dynasty isn't just skill, but timing and luck. For the Bruins fans, the 2019 Game 7 loss will always feel like one that got away. But imagining what it might have been isn't just cathartic. It's a reminder of how thin the line is between triumph and heartbreak in hockey. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.